So that was when I realized this is for real. And all three of us have seen it at different times. None of us knew about it. Victoria never knew about it. I didn't tell her, and I didn't mention it to you. And I knew she hadn't talked to you either. So there was no question in my mind it was 100% real.
They appear in your bedroom. They move through the walls. Impossibly dark, faceless figures that are there for a moment and then disappear, leaving only your fearful memory as evidence of their existence. Are the shadow people supernatural creatures, interdimensional beings, or perhaps shades of the underworld?
Or are they the construct of a frightened mind in a dark place, your brain filling in the gaps of your imagination? Or perhaps something else, a proven medical condition that has been studied and tested under laboratory conditions? That's what we set out to uncover in this episode of
Is That For Real?
Perfect.
So, there's a little background information for you. But are shadow people for real? Or, forgive me, are people just afraid of their own shadow? What do you think, Deasis? Do you believe in shadow?
Oh, they're definitely real.
Yeah.
They're definitely real.
I knew you believed in them.
Ask me how I know.
Yeah. How do you know, Deasis?
Yeah, because I've seen them.
Yeah.
And about 10 people I know at least have seen them.
Yeah. Very common.
Yeah.
You look this up, very common. In fact, and I'll put a link to this in the video description because it's the best site I've found so far for stories. It's called the Official Shadow People Archives. It's run by Susan Lawrence Fowler.
Right.
And it has about 300 stories of varying degrees of detail and, in my skeptical opinion, believability. But what I did was, because I'm a software developer by day, web developer, so I know how to do this, I wrote a script that downloaded all 300 stories, broke them all into their individual terms, and indexed them.
Okay.
And that way I could run queries.
Find anything good?
Yeah, I did. I found some really interesting stuff in these stories, including that about 70 of the 300 involved more than one person seeing the same thing
I'm not surprised. I'm telling you, these things are real. These things are out there. These are not like ghosts. You don't think you see them. You definitely see them.
Yeah. And about 33% of them were in the bedroom, which I got something to say about that once we get to the skeptical rebuttal to the evidence. And quite a lot of them were in the kitchen. But that sort of makes sense to me because where do people spend the most time when they're home? They're either in the bedroom or the kitchen most of the time.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's just common living areas, right? But again, the ones in the bedroom I got some issues with. But Susan Fowler has a really great description on the homepage. She talks about how some people see hatted shadow beings 21% of the time, hooded and cloaked 12% of the time. I broke down the numbers. Solid, wispy, smoky. Sometimes they only see them from the waist up. Sometimes they have legs. Sometimes they're running away from you. Sometimes they're running at you. They dart into corners, through walls, into closets, behind television sets, bushes, and buildings.
They pretty much scare you to death.
Most of the time, but not for everybody. There are some stories where people see them kind of like guardian angels, where they feel positive vibes whenever this thing is around, but the majority were negative. They were creeped out.
The Hat Man, that's the one, like the Mac Daddy. That's the one he's like the pimp of the shadow. Yeah. He's the one you don't want to see.
Oh, and I've got some very interesting information about the Hat Dude.
About that one.
Once we get to the rebuttal side, because I watched a video from a psychologist who has researched this extensively, and it's just some interesting stuff. But what do they look like? Deasis, you have seen
yes, I have.
Shadow people right in front of your face in broad daylight, not out of the corner of your eye. What do these things look like to you?
No. And I talked about this on my own YouTube page, a while back. Okay, so First off, it's not something that I thought I saw out of the corner of my eye. It's not something that I saw in a dark corner. It wasn't late at night. I saw this thing in midday getting out of the shower at my dad's house. And
Just to be clear, it wasn't getting out of the shower. You were.
No, yeah.
Okay. All right, now that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Shadow dude's taking a shower in my house.
Holy shit.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so I'll just briefly touch on the story.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so my dad's house seems to always have some stuff going on. And my stepmom was the first person that saw it. And I remember waking up one morning because my dad is a skeptic. He's like the mean skeptic. Oh yeah, bullshit. Yeah, what's wrong with you?
Right.
I woke up around 1995 or 96 to my stepmom yelling at my dad saying, "Damn it, Tim, I know what I saw." And my dad was like, "Oh, whatever. Yeah, bullshit, Kathy."
Right.
Her name was Kathy. And Kathy is a very skeptical type of person. She had a degree in business. She was your typical, not to be mean here, she was your typical boring middle-class businesswoman. She was realistic. Anytime you talk about something abstract or spiritual, she would, be quick to laugh it off. She was the type of person that's like, "Oh, yeah, there's a ghost under my bed. Yeah, well, tell it to clean your room." She was that type.
Gotcha.
So for her
That's
to
good.
freak out, about something kind of makes you think.
Gotcha.
But she would see these shadow people, and she saw this same shadow person in the same exact place 20 years before from where I saw it. And so, fast forward to 2016. This is 20 years later. I'm staying over at my dad's because I go and I see my dad down in Florida occasionally. And he was working on the bathroom in the hallway. So I said, "Well, Dad, can I use your bathroom to get a shower?" He's like, "Yeah, go ahead." I'm getting out of the shower. It's about 11 in the morning. It's not rainy. It's not dark. It's just a regular day. And I go to open the door, and there is a shadow figure that looks like black velvet. And it looks like a man. It's a male figure. He didn't have any hair. He was just a silhouette of a man. No eyes, no nothing. Looked like black velvet. And when I opened the door, I don't know what exactly he did, but he went like this when I opened the door. It was almost as if he was somewhat kneeled down, and he just kind of, puffed his chest out at me.
An aggressive stance.
An aggressive stance, right. It wasn't like, "Oh my God," no. It's like I go to open the door, and he's like, like, "Hey, what are you doing? Open the door," And I was like, "Holy shit!"
And this is right in front of your face.
Right in front of my face.
Not out of the corner of your eye.
Yeah, this wasn't out of the corner of my eye to where I was like, "Wait a minute, what was that?" No, it was, and I'm opening the door. I'm getting out of the shower. No drugs, no alcohol.
I was about to ask that. No drugs, no
nothing like that.
nothing. Yeah.
I don't do drugs.
Right.
I barely drink.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a heavy drinker. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into the BS.
Yeah.
It's funny to watch the Aces drink.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I'm getting out of the shower. I open the door up, and like I said, he, puckers up at me. I don't know what the hell he was doing.
Yeah.
But my first instinct, I jump back so hard, I fly into the cabinet behind me, the counter. The sink was over here.
Right, sure.
Shower was right here, door's right here, counter's right here. And I'm opening the door like this. Holy shit! And I jump up, and I just start praying. I'm sitting there. I probably sit there for about a minute, just praying.
Right.
Maybe a few minutes. I don't remember what it was, but I was scared to death.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just praying. I'm sitting there like, "God, make this thing go away. I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. Hallelujah."
Right. And it's interesting you
stop.
should do that, because we'll talk towards the end about the different things people say will get rid of shadow people. And that's very telling to me from the skeptical side. But go ahead.
I opened the door. He was gone. Never saw it again. That was 2016. I have not seen another shadowy person since. But I've had a lot of friends and family who have.
Right.
And same thing. They say it wasn't out of the corner of my eye. The damn thing looked at me and just stopped and was like, "Yeah, hello, what do you want?"
Some of the stories were very direct in front of people's faces that I read on the Shadow People archives, and some of them were out of the corner of the eye. The ones we're going to have in the show that we're going to do segments on were always multiple people, always direct vision, because the others. My skeptical side says, no, those are too easy to dismiss, so we're only going to talk about the ones that have more concrete or more credible situations involved. Now, if you want to know what Deasa saw, what it looked like, he showed me a video clip
I did.
Of a guy going into his basement.
Closest
and sees
thing
one.
To what I've seen of one. Whether that video is real or not, that's about what I saw. Right. And that's about how it acted.
So let's play that real quick so you can see what Deasis saw. Whether or not that video is real, this is what it looked like to Deasis.
All right, here we go. Hello. I know I hear you down here. I know I heard you. Holy...
So there's your shadow person. That's what they look like.
That's it. I'm telling you.
Yeah. They're there for a moment and then they're gone. Pretty much all the stories I've read were, it was a quick thing.
Yeah.
They weren't there for a long time. But in some cases, people were chased by it for a significant period of time, but it never lasted more, just based on my rough guess of the stories, more than like 60 seconds. It was never a really long thing.
See it for like a second or two, and like I said, I mean, from what I've heard and from what I've seen, they kind of just dart out at you real quick and then just disappear. Just scary as hell.
Some people believe that shadow people are interdimensional beings, like people from other dimensions passing through this one.
They're definitely something.
Other people believe that they're ghosts. When I did the breakdown, it's not just in the form of people, because when I get into the skeptical side, you'll see some psychologists say, well, why is it that they always see people? Well, because people are afraid of people, so the fear comes from people. That does make sense to me. That's part of my skeptical analysis of the whole thing.
Go with that.
But they didn't just see people. They've seen animals, orbs, like smoky things coming through doors and walls. It's not just shadow figures of people.
Yeah, like a shadow bear. Now that would really scare shadows. Holy shit.
Yeah. But it is interesting that if these figures are interdimensional beings, that beings from other dimensions often look very much like people. Yeah. Usually men. I'll talk about that too. But a lot of people see these things, like you said. I've never seen one, and outside of you and your circle of friends, I don't know anyone who's ever seen one. But then I haven't been asking, so... All right, and that goes back to the sheep-goat effect we talked about in
there it is, man.
Psychic.
You don't want to see them.
Yeah.
I don't want to see one again either.
Yeah, because I'm skeptical, the sheep-goat effect that the parapsychologists talk about will say I'm never going to see anything like that. But then my skepticism says that's a cop-out. So we'll see. But there's photographs. Here's one. This one is interesting. This is not a shadow person. This is a picture taken on a phone. And let me just read the description. This comes from the Shadow People archives. Girl wrote in, my brother found this picture on his phone. This is his room, his door, his chair, but he has no memory of taking this picture. It freaks both of us out. We have no idea what it could be. I asked him what he thought it was. He said a shadow person. He said he's come into contact with shadow people. He's seen them face to face. We're a family of empaths, so could that have something to do with it?
There it is.
Something took this picture. My brother didn't. I didn't. It's obviously not a fake or Photoshop picture, so where did it come from? And why is it here? It looks to me as if there's something connecting it to the ceiling. Does anyone have any information on me? For me, does this look like a known form of shadow person? If not, what is it? Because quite frankly, it scares the hell out of me and my brother.
Yeah, bet it does.
Now, I'm very skeptical about photography, and I'm skeptical about stories particularly like this one. But I really like the picture. Even if it's fake, it does capture what many of the stories say they saw when it wasn't a figure. It was like a smoky thing.
Right.
And that comes up a lot. And it's interesting that these same kinds of things come up a lot.
Yeah.
Though in the age of the internet.
Right. I mean, a lot of people are seeing the same things.
Yeah. They are. And they've been seeing them for a long, long time. These go way back. in history. People used to call them demons, shades, all kinds of different
I
things.
never thought about that.
Yeah. And it goes
the
back.
ancients wrote about them.
Yeah, like in the ghost episode we did last time. It goes way back in history. Thousands of years in the past, people have seen the things that they believe were these shadowy figures. And they look similar and act similar. They're freaky, whatever. So that is interesting that it goes that far back in history. Some people call shadow people ghosts, but other people like Susan Fowler, she said that she at first thought they were ghosts, but come to find out that ghosts are just one segment of the things that people are seeing.
Right.
So let's play a story about one of these now that you've told yours. And this is from someone named Lanika, and it's very interesting, involves multiple people. So let's play that, and we'll talk about it.
Lanika's parents live in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, in a military condo village that was built by the Air Force over farmland in 1980. Their house is small, and the TV room gives a straight view of the kitchen. In the TV room sat Lanika, age 35, her mother, age 56, and her son, age 8. They were talking about what was on the television, what happened in school that day, and her son's general boredom, when Lanika casually looked at the kitchen to her right and saw a black figure cross through a table in front of the refrigerator and enter her mother's bedroom.
It was blacker than the dark of the kitchen. A male silhouette, bald, with 2 arms and a torso, but underneath a thick line of smoke and nothing else. It was gone quickly, within 3 seconds according to her reckoning. Whatever it was, it just passed by without acknowledging anyone in the room. Lanika was ready to dismiss what she saw, assuming her brain was just toying with her, but then turned to see both her family members' frightened faces. Her son had seen it. Her mother had seen it too.
Lanika has never seen the shadow figure again, but said it's one of the only things in her life that she cannot rationally explain. Okay, see, this is a lot like what I saw. He was bald, silhouette, that's it.
Male.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly, just about exactly what I saw.
What fascinates me about stories like this, there's a few things that she said in the full story that's just really got my attention. First of all, there's 3 people.
Right.
There's the grandmother who's 56, there's the mother who's 35, and there's the son who's 8. So 3 people, they're not doing anything of consequence. They're just chatting about, day-to-day stuff. The mom looks to the right into the kitchen and sees a figure that's described like for 3 seconds. And at first it's like, okay, my mind's playing tricks on me.
Right.
She wasn't prepped to see something. She wasn't scared. She wasn't in the state of being afraid. It's daytime, whatever. And so she assumes it's just my mind messing with me because it's dark in the kitchen.
Right.
But then she turns to the grandmother, and the grandmother's scared, and the son is freaking out. They all saw the same
What
thing.
the hell was that? Yeah.
At the same time. And she makes a good point because she talks about mass hallucinations, which supposedly happen sometimes. And she says sharing a hallucination happens after something preps the group to see the same stuff. Not just when nothing's going on.
Right.
And most mass hallucinations involve feelings, not vision. So people feel anxious.
Not people seeing the same thing.
Yeah, anxious, afraid, hysteria, things like that. There's mass psychogenic disorder is the technical name for it. But that's not what's going on here.
Right.
So if this woman is telling the truth, how did all 3 people see the same thing at the same time?
Yeah. I mean, out of all, ghost sightings, psi abilities, stuff like that, this is one of the few things that I really do have a lot of belief in.
Right.
People say they see shadow people. I believe them usually. Because
Well,
I've seen it.
your own direct experience.
Well, and the thing is, too, I was on the skeptical side, honestly. Not completely. I mean, I'm inclined to kind of, think a little bit about this stuff and consider it. But I was very skeptical of my mom seeing this, my stepmom seeing this, because they've both seen these shadowy things. I was skeptical about my sister seeing these things, and all the neighbors and friends that I know, because like I said, a lot of people have seen shadow people around me. I was really skeptical until 2016 when I saw it literally face to face the first time myself. And then I just thought I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, Kathy was right all these years. Because, we used to write her off a little bit. I mean, not completely, but, it's hard to believe.
Right.
So I saw a shadow thing out in the yard when I opened the door and it creeped me out. Oh, okay, Kathy, kind of like that thing you saw in the bathroom. And we weren't, well, we did kind of laugh at her. I mean, it was hard to believe.
Right.
Maybe you're paranoid, Kathy. Maybe you're not seeing, what you think you saw. Or maybe it was some kids outside playing or whatever. And then finally I see it myself and I'm like, oh my God, these things are real.
If you had to estimate how tall the thing was, what would you say?
This particular one that I saw, about my height, I'm 5'8".
Okay.
I would say it was between 5'8", 5'11".
Okay.
So, it was, about my size.
I noticed in the stories that quite a few people estimated the height of the thing at 5 feet, like just 5 feet.
Wow.
Not really tall. Yeah. But I found it interesting that came up quite a few times.
Right. Wow.
And everyone that I read, or most of the ones that I read, were like, we're just normal people. I don't believe in this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it was human-sized.
Yeah, sure.
It was, like I said, it was between probably my height, give or take.
Yeah.
It wasn't massive. It wasn't tiny. It was just some dude that looked like a silhouette.
Right. And we talked in the ghost episode about how electromagnetism and mold in old houses, and Deasis was in an old house from the 50s, and infrasound, like those things can cause people to see things. What I find interesting is that everyone sees the same thing.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, if the house is causing people to see and hear things or whatever, wouldn't they each see something different based on their own experience and their mind filling in the gaps? Maybe. I'm skeptical, but it's harder for me to explain it away when multiple people see the same thing.
Right.
And that's all I'm saying. All right, well, we've got a couple more stories, so let's get into the next one, and then we'll talk about it. There used to be a swimming hole near Williams College in Massachusetts called the Tubs. The Tubs was a series of granite pools along a stream in the woods. About 30 years ago, 6 friends were swimming there on a hot spring day. The group of friends were in the top pool. On one side was a hill with trees and leaves. At one point, 3 of them noticed a man in canvas-colored clothing and wearing a hat walking up the hill about 20 yards away.
They were surprised, because no one had been around as far as they knew. The figure stopped and looked back at them. They each saw that he had no face, only a dark zone. Somehow, he passed out of their awareness, leaving them to compare notes about what they had actually seen. They all claimed to have seen the same thing, and it all happened very quickly. Once again, we've got multiple people during the day seeing the same thing. This time, it's near Williams College, which is in Massachusetts, at a place called the Tubs. It's a swimming hole, or at least it was 30 years ago. Right. And it's a series of granite pools. They're swimming. There's a hill on one side, and they see this thing in the day. Yeah. No face, dark features, disappears after a few seconds. Yeah. Now, being the skeptic, my mind immediately went to the oracles of ancient Greece. The oracles were the prophets that would tell the leaders what the gods are saying, right? But interesting, I took a trip to Greece and went to a number of the places where these oracles hung out. And what do you know? They would build the building over natural sulfur deposits, and there were holes in the floor to let the sulfur fumes in. And what do you think was causing the visions, right? So my brain goes to that. I'm thinking, well, is there any kind of natural deposit? Is sulfur or something else that may cause people to see things? But the thing that always gets to me, they see the same thing. Yeah. They don't just see something. They see the same thing. And I haven't found a good explanation for that yet.
I have a lot to say on the skeptical side when we get to that, but that's tough. What do you think?
Well, yes and no, honestly. Okay, so I have seen this happen before, where people will be scared, people will be paranoid, and they will all maybe see something of their own imagination, and they will start to corroborate their stories with each other.
Good point.
It happens a lot. People are naturally social, and they tend to naturally seem to try to fall in line with each other. And I've seen that kind of happen.
That's an excellent point. That had not occurred to me. People.
I was thinking about that as I was reading the story.
And as many studies have shown,
maybe someone could have saw something over here. This person saw something over here. Maybe this person saw,
did yours
something
have a face? No. Did yours have a hat? Yes.
It's like, well, now that I think about it, maybe, and then it starts to become one story.
This is where the problem comes. That's a great point. I'm glad you brought it up.
I've seen it happen.
The problem comes in.
To be fair to the skeptics,
when multiple people are saying the same thing, is that your memory is so bad. Human memory is so poor.
It is. You can't trust it.
You just can't, because once you start talking yourself into thinking you remember something, you remember it. I'll give you an example. I took a trip with my ex-wife years ago.
Yeah.
And I did not have a good first marriage. Right. Very rough. Got divorced. My memories for that, no joke. I was talking to Beth, my current wife, wonderful woman, about the trip as if she was there. I'm like, yeah, do you remember when we took the kids to the museum at blah, blah, blah? She's like, no. Because my brain has replaced my ex-wife's image in those memories with Beth. Why? Because I have all good memories of Beth. Yeah. And so the brain's like, well, I like her better, so I'm going to just shove her in there. That's how human memory works. It's so fallible. It's so subjective.
It is.
And so I could see how things like that could happen. But this happens a lot.
Right.
A lot of these stories, multiple people. And the next one we're going to go through involves police officers. 3 police officers.
Yeah, they're usually pretty good about being rational.
They have to be. We've talked about that before. When they're not rational, man, the media, firestorm, right? So let's play that segment and we'll talk about it.
About 3 years ago, in late May or early June, 3 police officers were doing a routine building lockdown. All of them were on the 3rd floor, with 2 officers in the west wing and the other in the east wing. The 2 West Wing officers were finished with their section of the building and decided to sit and wait for the officer that was in the East Wing to finish. A short time later, the officer arrived to meet them, and he was not happy. He went about yelling at the other 2 for going in behind him and turning the lights on when he had just turned them off, and vice versa.
The other officers looked at him as if he was crazy and told him that they were at the West Wing of the building waiting on him to finish, but he didn't believe them. The lone officer then received a call over his walkie and left. The remaining 2 officers decided to go downstairs to the basement and take a lunch break. They headed off to the south elevators when someone or something turned on the light behind them. They turned around and saw a shadow run across the hallway. In the area where they were in, there were 7 doors, all closed. They heard no door open or close, and no footsteps, even though the shadow they saw was running.
The officers did a quick check of the immediate area and called dispatch to give them any alarms that they received in the general area. But there were no alarms. The 3rd officer came back on the walkie, advising the other 2 that the lights on the east wing were back on. After an hour of doing another building check, they found no people, but did find lights on where they should have been off. Neither officer have seen the shadow since that summer night, but they've never stopped looking. This is interesting, and this is actually a point that I forgot to bring out. So in this story, there's no noise. Yeah. The shadow figure is running, there is no noise. That reminds me of my experience. I never heard this shadow. He didn't make any noise quiet. And all the people that I know who have seen these things, they don't ever talk about them making any kind of noises or communicating at all. They're quiet. You just see them, and that's it.
That's a good point, because I read dozens of
Yeah.
the stories on that archive site. And
Did you ever make noise?
None of them
I believe it.
involved
Yeah.
noise. And you made a good point that separates shadow people from
Yeah.
ghosts, because
think it
people who
does.
see ghosts often hear
Yeah.
noise with the ghost,
Yeah.
but not shadow people. Why would it be different? If it's being caused by the things that skeptics say it's being caused by, like we talked about electromagnetism, infrasound, mold, whatever, shouldn't they be hearing something too? I mean, wouldn't their brain hallucinate in the same way it does with ghosts, with
Right.
shadow people? But it doesn't. Why is it different?
I don't know, and it's weird because I mean, here's the two things that I hear about with shadow people: really bad feeling,
Right.
and then they see it. That's it. You don't know noises,
Right.
no communication, no nothing. You feel weird, and then you see something.
And again, these are police. 3 police.
Yeah.
Routine inspection of a building.
Yeah.
One cop thinks that the other 2 are messing with him because they're turning lights on and off behind him, but the other 2 are in a different wing of the building. They're like, dude, we weren't there. And then they go down to eat in the basement. They see something, a shadow run through the hall. They're cops. No one's supposed to be there.
Right.
So they go to check it out, but they don't hear anything. No doors open, no doors closed, but it's gone from the hall. And they even call dispatch. They do the alarm check. The whole thing that a cop would do if something was actually there, it all comes back negative
Yeah.
and no noise.
And, you know, that's the thing about police officers. And, you know, granted, they're not perfect, and we've heard a lot in the media about them, you know, both bad and good.
Sure.
But the police officers that I know are usually known for being pretty rational.
You'd have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty level-headed, pretty rational, pretty realistic, not inclined to exaggerate or speculate, you know,
Right.
and stuff like that.
Yeah. That one, that's probably the story that hits the hardest for me.
Yeah.
Because they're cops. They're on duty, routine building inspection. They call dispatch. All these things happen with the lights. They're not the kind of people that I would think would be inclined
Right.
to fabricate it. And I'm not a cop, so I don't know, reading through this, if the way it's written is actually how a cop would say it. If someone is, please let us know. Does it sound like a police story? Because my skeptical mind says, well, maybe the whole thing's just fabricated.
Right.
Maybe none of this
And it could
happened
be.
at all. And it could be. But if it's not, it's got a lot of interesting detail
Right.
in it. Yeah.
And even if it is, this is still a very common consensus
Yeah.
of what people keep seeing.
Yeah.
and
Including
experiencing.
you.
Including me, yeah.
And you're kind of like the peg that keeps the needle for me from moving to 100% skepticism because I know you. I know you don't do drugs. I know you don't hardly drink at all. I know you're a reasonable, rational person. I know these things about you. So the fact that it was in broad daylight, the fact that it was right there when you got out of the shower, all of that, I'm inclined to not dismiss your story in the way I would be inclined to dismiss the story of someone I don't know.
Well, and you know, and to your credit and the skeptic's credit, I didn't really believe in these things either until I
Right.
saw it.
Right.
Anytime, and I grew up believing in God and all that,
Sure,
praying and
sure.
believing in afterlife and angels and demons and maybe even wondering about ghosts.
Right.
But I didn't really put a lot of stock into it until I saw one.
Right.
You know.
You were even kind of picking on your
Yeah, I
on
mean,
your
I would.
stepmother,
Yeah, I mean, because my friends.
Right.
Oh, yeah, you know, there was a shadowy figure hanging around your house, and oh, okay, you know, sure.
Right.
You sure it wasn't
Yeah,
some
okay,
kid dressed
okay.
up in black, or
Yeah.
you know, and then the kids outside playing when my stepmom Kathy would see them, and I would just rule it all out. Well, Kathy, were you tired, or no? I don't. I'm not going to argue with you right now. I know what I saw. Okay, and then I saw it, and I was like, okay, something's going on here.
Multiple people didn't see what you saw at the same time, but multiple people in your household have
Yeah.
seen the same thing. And in all these other stories, and the last one we're about to play, it's multiple people at the same time seeing the same thing. And in the case of the cops, we're talking about people who are on the job that have to be very rational
Right.
in what they're doing and they responded as if it was actually an intruder, but nothing was there. Crazy. All right, well, we've got one more story. So let's play that one. We'll talk about it, and then we'll get to what the skeptics have to say. At a Civil War reenactment in Louisiana in 2004, a man in a Confederate uniform with an old oil-burning lantern went up the back stairs of the plantation house where the reenactment was being held. It was the old servants' entrance to the house and the sick room. The door was locked, so the man looked through the glass and held the lantern up to inspect the old desk and other furnishings of the room. When he looked to the left, he saw a shadow moving about. It was about 5 feet tall and wore what looked like a vest. Upon seeing this, he returned to camp and asked the groundskeeper if anyone was in the house.
The groundskeeper said no. The house was locked up and the alarm was set. After being told what the man had witnessed, the groundskeeper said that he had just seen the shadow man, and that other people have seen him as well. Around 1 a.m., the Confederate-dressed man took along 2 other people, a man and his daughter, and returned to the house, going once more up the back steps and looking into the same room. The shadow man was still there, walking around the room. The shadow turned to look at them, revealing a faceless head, and then disappeared. So for one soldier, the war was clearly not over.
That's a good point. You know, I hadn't really thought about that too much until we were talking.
Yeah.
This was at a Civil War reenactment site.
Right.
Where are you going to get phenomena? It usually occurs around places where big events happen, right? Like battles, wars, things like that.
Yeah, and living here in the South, I can't count how many, ghost stories and stuff like that I've heard growing up here in the South.
Now, the skeptics would say that that's because the South is less educated than the North.
Yep.
And we'll get into some of that when we get into the skeptical side. But this story, again, multiple people, 3 people. Now, at first, it's one guy. He goes upstairs.
I believe it.
He looks through the window. He sees the shadow person. This is odd. He goes down. He talks to the groundskeeper. The groundskeeper's like, everybody sees that guy.
Yeah. Oh, that guy.
That's Freddie. Whatever.
He's mad about the war.
Not a big deal. And now, if it was just him, as always, I'd immediately dismiss it. Just one person, whatever. It's your brain messing with you. Yeah. But he brings 2 people back with him to check it out, and they both see it too. And
that's just Steve up there, boss man.
When the shadow person turns and looks at him, there are no facial features, which is a common theme. I don't think I've seen anyone say that the person they saw had facial features. It's always a blank face. And as soon as it turns and looks at him, it disappears, which is also common in the stories I read. Not always, because sometimes people get chased by them or the thing runs away or whatever. But usually, once the person looks at them, that's the last moment that it's there. Yeah. It's very interesting stuff. Multiple people seeing the same thing. Yeah. If it was a mass hallucination, maybe they'd feel the same fright, but why did they see the same thing? Unless what you said is true, maybe they later corroborated their story as some kind of social thing.
Yeah, and I don't even feel like people do it on purpose. I feel like people just naturally tend to fall in line with each other. Mm-hmm. It's like we were talking about off camera. If 4 people, saw a guy, or 3 people saw a guy on a bike, the 4th person saw a guy on a skateboard, and they're all really staunch and strong. Oh, no, it's a guy on a bike. The guy on the skateboard, or the guy that believes it was the skateboard, he might say, well, actually, I think it was a bike. And then maybe years later, he's like, yeah, it was a bike.
Right.
They will just kind of naturally fall in line.
Yeah. That's true. So maybe that's what's going on. And skeptics would certainly lean towards that. But there are a lot of believers with a lot of stories. And I cannot encourage you enough, if you're interested in this topic, to go to that site that's in the video description, the Official Shadow People Archives. 300 stories. And she updates it all the time. The last one was added just a couple days ago. So this person's still working on it. It's bigger than
Ghost, if you ask me.
Yeah. It's fascinating. It really is interesting. Okay, now that's our last narrated segment, but Deace's sister, who he has already said has also seen a shadow person, agreed to come on the show and tell us about it. So we interviewed her, and we're going to play that now, and you guys can decide for yourself.
Okay, so now we want to welcome Victoria Thompson and Brenda Ayala to the show. And this is actually my sister and my mother. And thanks, Mom, for being on the show.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so they're going to give us some more details about the experience in Gallatin, Tennessee. And Victoria, if you want, go ahead and start.
Okay. So I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and I was downstairs, and I had just gotten out of the bathtub, which was next to my mother's room. I went into my mom's room to basically cuddle with her, the usual nightly routine, and all moms take their bras off when they get home. So she told me to go put it in the dirty clothes, and I walked out of her room, and she stayed in the room. The lights weren't on in my kitchen. That hallway that was connecting her bathroom and room connected to the kitchen as well. And so I went into the kitchen, and I opened the, what are those called? The closet doors?
Laundry doors.
The laundry doors. And when I did, I had her bra in my right hand, and I looked down at my hand, but then I looked up, and it was this dark, not like my shadow. It was very tall, maybe like 5'10" to 5'11" in height. And it was very dark, very, very dark. And it basically launched at me, but it continued past me because my eyes were, dead on it at the time. And I was kind of looking up to it because it was bigger than me. And it went straight, basically like through me or past me. And when it did, I felt my body tense up. I didn't get cold or get chills or anything like that, but I felt my body tense up for a brief second. And then I just screamed at the top of my lungs, "Mom!" Because as soon as I turned around, just out of natural instinct, I turned around and it was gone. There was nothing behind me. So immediately I screamed and I go running into her room and I jumped onto her. And I think that's when she called you down, or you heard it. But I know that you came to the room as well because she looked sick when I said, "I just saw a big shadow. A big shadow just jumped at me." And she just looked very concerned, like all the color washed out of her face.
Well, and what she didn't know was that I had seen that same shadow coming from that laundry area and walk right through the window that was across the dining room. So, and I didn't tell her because I didn't want her to be afraid. But when she came out of that bathroom and just looked scared to death and ran to me, that was the first time that I was actually really frightened about it. So it literally went through the same area that she had talked about a few days later and walked through the kitchen and walked right out the window off the patio and just out of the house. When I saw it, it was broad daylight. So it was pitch black. This shadow was pitch black. At the time, I thought it had a baseball cap on. It gives me chills now. Yeah. It just scares me. I thought it had a baseball cap on. But after several months, and then after you had your experience with this it looked exactly the same as what she described and what I had seen, I started doing some research about the land that we lived on because I thought we might have been over a cemetery. These were all the things that I was thinking, where do we live? And at the time we lived out in the woods. It was pretty country. We lived on about 1.5 acres. A beautiful piece of property. It had a creek that ran through it. And you guys found lots of Indian money, but buttons, bullets, round metal bullets, arrowheads, things like that. So as I did my research, I realized that the plot of land that we lived on and all of the land in that subdivision was actually part of the Dade Battlefield War. There was an actual battle that is historically documented that was fought on our property. And it went all the way back to Bledsoe Creek. So it was a big piece of land, probably a mile square, where this battle took place. And my feeling is now that it probably was not a baseball cap so much as it was a Confederate hat because of the bill. The bill was real square and wide. Yes. And the hat was boxy. It wasn't rounded like a baseball cap. And then when I asked Victoria about it, after I discovered that, she described the cap the same way that I saw it.
And when I did see it, she saw it in the daytime, but I saw it, I mean, it must have been probably 8 or 9 o'clock at night because I was getting ready to go to bed. And I could still see it just how she said, dark, the same way, very, very pitch black. It was, I don't know I guess a more foggy feel. I don't know, just very, like a very thick black. There was a very, very like strong consistency of the shadow. It was just, it was very creepy. It was very, very creepy.
I want to thank you guys for actually being able to come on the show, because there were a lot of details, hearing it secondhand and trying to quote verbatim that I would have definitely left out, because our neighbor, Adam Cersei, if you remember, he said that he saw it walking away from the house at sunset, and he said that at first he thought it was a person, and then he said after looking at it, he said he didn't think it was human, and he said that it was walking almost in a paranoid way away from the house, and then made a right down the fence line or towards the fence line and disappear.
Right.
And also, I want to ask you, Victoria, about when you saw it in your bedroom, because I think you told me that you saw it twice, and that was the first time, and I think the second time you said that you flipped on the light in your bedroom and it was there, right?
Yes. Oh my God. So basically, I kind of forgot about that. Now that you mentioned it, that's crazy, because I do remember that, but I didn't think that it was. I didn't see it as clearly. I thought I saw, and so I flipped the light on, and of course it dissipated. It was gone, but I did not see it completely there. That was the first time. The second time was when it was straight at me, and that's when I could describe it to Mom, and I could tell her what it was. And I believe even shortly after that, if not that day, she had a local pastor that we knew come into the house. Me and her and you, I believe, left because he didn't want anybody there. And I believe he brought oil and a Bible. And what he found was a dream catcher that had an upside down star in it. And that was at that window that he removed. And he stayed there after he removed it, and he prayed all night by himself. He said he laid on the floor in the living room in the pitch black, and I guess he prayed all night and stayed up all night. And we moved a couple of years after that, because that's when we came to Florida. So I haven't experienced that since, but I remember it to the T up to this day.
Well, and one of the things too, that you may not remember was that you called me at work one day, and it was before you knew anything about Victoria spotting it. You called me at work one day and you said, Mom, there's a kid, and he was at the back fence line, and I went up to see him. And when I got up there, he was gone. And you didn't remember that when you and I had talked about it years later. But I remember that distinctly giving me the coldest chill, because all I could think was, I'm at work 45 minutes away, and my kids are at this house where there's clearly somebody of a spiritual nature hanging out. It terrified me.
So just for clarification here, Mom, I think that you had said that you had seen this first and never mentioned it to us until Victoria saw it, right?
Right. So what happened was, the day that I saw it during the daytime, I was in the living room, and I didn't want to scare my kids, because it frightened me, and it was broad daylight, and I thought, I've lost my mind. I'm out here in the country. I'm outside of civilization, so I must have lost my mind. And I didn't say anything because I didn't want to frighten you guys. You were a teenager and she was little, 6, 7 years old. And then it was a few days after that she had the encounter in the kitchen. You had also called at work before I'd said anything and said that you saw a kid at the back fence, but when you ran out there to see who it was, you said it was a teenager with a ball cap on. When you got to the fence, it was gone. So that was when I realized this is for real, and all three of us have seen it at different times. None of us knew about it. Victoria never knew about it. I didn't tell her, and I didn't mention it to you, and I knew she hadn't talked to you either. So there was no question in my mind. It was 100% real.
Right.
I'm not going to lie, John. This is actually one of the stories that did make me kind of stop and say, okay, why would a kid make this up?
Yeah. You've said that a lot. Why would a kid make this up?
Yeah. Up until that point, it had been, teenagers and adults telling me that they've seen shadow people. And, I figured maybe a adult could fabricate this. But my sister walking to her bedroom to get dressed after getting out of the bathtub, getting ready for bed, to flip on the light and see this thing and go flying across the house, screaming and crying. That one made me think. Because I did. I came downstairs. I was like, what's going on? And then that was the first time hearing about a shadow story where I thought, okay, maybe this happened.
You weren't a believer, but it moved the needle.
Yeah, like you. It moved. It kind of made me stop and say, okay, what's going on? Yeah. So.
Well, the skeptics have a lot to say about what's going on. And so let's get into the points they make against all of this. And they do make some really good points. Yeah. The first thing that they always point to that I could find was sleep paralysis. I totally get this one. Yeah. I get it. We've talked about it before.
Somebody says they see a shadow during sleep paralysis. Even I won't believe that.
Yeah.
I'll believe that they believe it, but I won't believe it myself. Yes. You know what I mean?
It's called a hypnagogic hallucination. This is what happens. I used to practice lucid dreaming. We're going to do an episode on that. And one of the things they teach you whenever you try to remain consciously aware in your dreams is that as you fall asleep, you have to keep your mind awake while your body falls asleep. And there's a state between being awake and being asleep that's called the hypnagogic state, where I can attest you hear and see things like it was really happening. But it's not. It's your brain. Your body's falling asleep. Your brain's going to that state. And it just starts replaying things, creating things. This morning, I was telling Deasis, this morning, I have been working on this stuff like nonstop. And so it's on my mind a lot. This morning, I wake up. And in that groggy first moment of opening my eyes, I hear the voice of a little boy say yes. But that kind of thing doesn't freak me out because I know what it is. I've studied this. I used to practice lucid dreaming, and I recognize the voice because it's from a clip I used in last week's episode. The voice didn't say the same thing, but it was the same voice. But someone who doesn't know that, who isn't aware of the hypnagogic state, who isn't aware that this can happen in between you being asleep and being awake, it's going to freak them out. And totally understandably, it's going to freak them out. 1/3 of the stories happened in the bedroom as people were either falling asleep or waking up. Your mind is hazy, your eyes are opening, you're not quite out of the dream state yet, but you're coming out of REM sleep, and you think you see something. It's never distinct. Yeah. It's not like Deasis appears in the room. It's like, hey, John, we're going to film. It's not like
do a show, man.
It's not like that. It's fuzzy. It's unclear. There's no facial features. It's dark. It's black, whatever. You don't necessarily hear anything. All of that could be sleep paralysis or the hypnagogic hallucination.
And to be fair, even I would be inclined to kind of dismiss that because we all have had these in between being awake and dreaming, voices and seeing things, experiences where it looks and it feels real. And then, 5 minutes later, as you're starting to wake up more, you're like, okay, I was halfway still in my dream.
Yep. Now, the scariest one, the Hat Man.
Yeah.
Everyone knows. Oh,
I hope I never see him.
Yeah,
I
bad
will
news,
run my ass off if I ever see him.
That one, in all the stories I could find, where somebody was being attacked or something like that, it was definitely sleep paralysis, in my opinion, because they're waking up. They can't move. They can't scream. They see this thing. All of these things are symptoms of sleep paralysis. They feel like they're being choked. They feel like something's pushing on their chest. That's all symptoms of sleep paralysis. All of it.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's easily dismissed. The thing I have the harder time with is a bunch of people seeing the same thing at the same time in broad daylight.
Right.
But what you said kind of makes me even lean against that one because that's a good point. People start corroborating their stories. Memory, human.
They don't mean to, but they do.
Of course not. They're not doing that on purpose. They're just
like, oh man, I saw 2 planes hit the building, or 1 plane hit. Well, I think it was 2. Well, you know what? Yeah, maybe it was 2.
I think I did see a second. And then once they've said that, their brain implants it in their
starts
memory.
becoming real to them.
That's how our crappy memories work as human
we
beings.
can't even help it.
It's just the way it is. It's why scientists don't rely on that kind of subjective recall. They want data, evidence, things actually on video that hasn't been doctored, that they took themselves so they know it's real.
Things that they know are repeatable.
Yes, repeatable, verifiable laboratory science is what they like to see. And then you've got all this variance.
Yeah.
Different shapes, sizes, forms, features, and intentions. Sometimes some people think they're good. Most of the time they think they're evil.
Yeah.
If it's all the same thing, why does it look different for everybody?
Yeah.
And you say, oh, yes, but the fact that there's so many people who see similar things should tell you something. Well, I got two answers to that. One,
What you got, John?
we're all human beings. We're all made out of the same stuff. Our biology is very, very similar to each other. Whatever's affecting people
Touche.
cause them to see or hear, well, not hear, but to see these things, of course we're going to respond similarly to it. That's the first thing. Second thing, the internet. If you already believe in this stuff and you go online and search for shadow people, first, you're going to find all these stories, and then, oh, lo and behold, 2 weeks later, you see the same thing. What a surprise.
In a lucid dream.
Oh, that's true, huh? Like that. But we also have the faulty human memory.
Yeah.
You start seeing all these images on YouTube or whatever.
Yeah.
And
That makes sense.
you start thinking that you remember that that's what you saw.
That is a fair argument. I mean, honestly, it is. So that's a pretty fair argument.
Yeah. So that's my issue with all of that. Now, my next thing is I watched an interesting interview with a psychologist, and he was answering the question, why a hat man? And he's like, look, in the West, people see a hat man. Why do they see a hat man in the West? Who's a very famous character of dark horror films that wears a hat and preys on people in the night?
Dracula.
No. Well, Dracula, but he doesn't wear a hat. Freddy Krueger.
Oh, yeah.
Modern times Freddy Krueger. But before Freddy Krueger, you know who there was? There was Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
Black hat, dark cloak, in the shadows, violent guy.
Now, wait a minute. What about the pictures of people taking pictures of the Hat Man? There's pretty good.
Yeah, but
There's
Photoshop,
one.
man.
No, there's one good picture out there. I hope you find it. Hopefully, we'll show it later on. But there is a really good picture that I've seen. Kind of jumping ahead of you, but
That's fine. Go ahead.
No, there is a family. Okay, and I'm sure John will find it. And by the time this show comes out, it's going to be right here. He's standing there, like the guy with the hat is standing there with the family. I'm telling. Wait till you see it, John. I'm telling you. You just
Dude,
wait. You just wait, man.
We just went to
I know
the
it was
movies.
real because it's on the internet.
We just went to the movies yesterday with our kids, and we saw Maleficent 2.
Yep.
Very
See,
good
she was
movie, by
a
the
shadow
way.
woman too.
Hello, you
There it
see
is.
Maleficent flying through the sky. Do you really think that there's a winged woman flying through the sky?
She was a shadow creature.
All that stuff is so easily doctored. Man, I've known dudes, because I'm a software developer, that are amazing at manipulating this stuff. Why do you think the pictures and the videos have gotten so much better over the years? Because the tech is so much
Because
better.
it's real, John. Because it's real.
Well, the guy who was a psychologist says, look, everywhere you go, you find different aspects and features to the shadow people. And another psychologist who was a woman on another video I watched, like, that just makes perfect sense. The culture of the community and the country where people live is going to change what they see. The belief systems are different. The history's different. It's going to have similarities.
Maybe shadow people are from different countries too. Maybe the Hat Man is American.
Well, but
There it is, America.
But if they're interdimensional creatures, how come some people see shadow people cats? Why is it that they look like people? Why don't they look like some other thing? So sometimes
They came
do,
from the
to be
shadow
fair.
forest.
The shadow force. Sometimes they do. There's orbs, there's smoke. Sometimes they are unusual shapes or whatever. But most of the time, it's a dude, which also takes me back to the psychology. What are people more afraid of? Men in dark places or women in dark places? Historically, culturally, most people are afraid of dudes. Why? Because dudes are bigger, generally stronger, generally more aggressive. Yeah. This is all generalities.
That's true.
Generally speaking,
Generally.
What is someone going to be more afraid of? A guy coming out of the shadow, especially if it's a big, scary looking dude. So, what does that tell you? Most people are going to see male shadow figures that are dangerous. And what do most people see? Male shadow figures. Some people see women, but it's mostly the male.
The Hat Man would kind of look like an Undertaker or Grim Reaper or something.
Yeah,
like that.
and they say that. Why does he look like the Undertaker? Because people have
or whatever
cultural ideas about that. Why isn't it a hat woman? Why isn't it
That'd
a
be
hat
pretty hot.
cat? Yeah, I know. If there's any shadow women come pay Jason to visit, I'm sure he'd love to show you around.
Don't kill me. Definitely come and see me. Please don't kill me. Please.
So you get into all the cultural aspects, and the psychologists say, look, yeah, of course, people are having these hypnagogic hallucinations, but what they're seeing can easily be understood through the lens of psychology and culture. Right? So that's what they say. And a lot of the stories, not all like yours, a lot of them are out of the corner of the eye.
Yeah.
And like we talked about in the ghost episode, you've got an 18-degree clear, sharp field of vision, and everything else is a little fuzzy. So you have to focus on a thing to see it clearly. Everything else around it is fuzzy. Your brain is going to fill in the gaps with what it knows.
Yeah, and even the side-eye stuff, I mean, even me, I would be inclined to dismiss because we can see anything. I can't tell you how many times I've seen crazy stuff out of the shadow of my eye.
Yep.
Rarely,
Dead to
direct vision, but side eye, oh yeah, all the time.
I found a great example, fantastic example of this at the Bachelor's Grove Cemetery outside of Chicago. Now look at this picture. This first picture is a picture that a guy took and posted on Facebook.
There he is. That proves it.
Holy
They're
shit.
real.
It does look like there's a ghost or something there, right? So he posts this on Facebook and he's like, what am I looking at? A photographer replies. It's beautiful. Photographer replies. It's like, oh yeah, I see this all the time.
Want me to tell you?
And he lays it out for him. This is what you're seeing. There's a tree on this side. There's a tree on that side. They're both fuzzy because they're outside of the focus of the camera, and there's some light in the middle. And that's what you're actually seeing.
Or is it?
And he proves it by taking a picture from a different angle that shows the same trees. And you can see, yeah, there's the tree on the side, there's a tree on the side.
I suppose.
And he says this is very common in photography.
We'll let that one slide.
Right. So what happens? This cemetery, the Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, is well known and believed to be haunted. So people who go there with their camera,
and confirmation bias.
Why else would they be taking pictures?
Yeah.
They believe it's haunted.
They're hoping to catch something.
And they see something.
That's a fair argument.
And they take the picture. The brain fills in the gaps. It doesn't know exactly what it's seeing, but they showed up at the cemetery expecting to see a ghost or a shadow person or whatever, and there it is.
Yeah.
But there is a rational explanation from a photographer for why this happens, and he clearly demonstrates what's really going on here. So I'm not going to tell people they're not seeing something. You know my stand on that. I would never tell somebody they're not seeing something. I wasn't there. But my skeptical brain goes back to Ghostbusters. Yeah. At least she thinks she sees what she sees.
I think it was he.
Was it Dana or was it...
Yeah, it was
Keymaster.
Yeah, I'm the Keymaster.
Yeah,
yeah. So Egon,
they hooked the machine up to the head. Yeah,
or he's telling the truth, or at least
that's
actually.
it.
I don't know. It might have been both. Because I remember they checked her out one time too.
I think that one was Dana, but I'll show it on the screen.
Yeah.
The point being that these people legitimately
They
believe.
do genuinely believe it.
And because they believe, their brain fills in the gaps with what they believe. Whereas a skeptic would never see that at the Bachelor's Grove Cemetery because they don't believe.
That's true. They're not
So
really
you've got
looking
that.
for it. So they
Now-
don't have any confirmation bias.
Yeah, true. And then we've got the problem. Yes, there are 300 stories on this site, and they are fascinating, so definitely go check it out. But how do we know people aren't conflating what happened? How do we know they're
That's
not
true.
fabricating the whole damn thing?
That's true. That's true.
Some people probably do legitimately
I
believe
mean,
they've seen
it's
something.
not like they can go and show you right now and be like,
Yeah.
all right, I'm out here right now, and there it is. See
There it is.
Watch.
Yeah, they can never bring you to show it. It happened for a second and then it's gone.
Yeah.
And even the police, as rational as they would have to be, they're still human beings. Maybe it was a dark building. Some weird stuff happened. They were kind of freaking out a little bit. They're still Americans. 3 out of 4 Americans believe in parapsychology, right? Or paranormal.
Well, you think about
Activity,
cars
right?
riding by with their lights, and that causes shadows to move across walls really fast. Mm-hmm. Which can make you think you saw something
Yeah.
if you're already paranoid, and you're like, whoa.
And then it comes back to what you were talking about. The cops are partners. That social need to agree with each other.
Yeah.
If the one saw something, the other saw something, and the one says it was a guy, the other one's like, yeah, I think you were right.
Yeah, I think
And
it
then
was
we
a
come
guy.
back to that same problem. It's not that they're not rational. It's that our social biological being has the need to agree, especially with your partner.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to say, oh, you're an idiot. You know, you don't want to do that.
People really do try to, reach consensus, especially with people that they get along with.
Yeah.
I've noticed that.
They
They're
do.
really inclined to do that.
And that plays a role.
Yeah.
All of these things play a role in what people are seeing. And now the last point that occurred to me was I was flipping through the forums of that official archive
Yeah.
site where people were talking about it. And there's all these different ways people are talking about how to get rid of them. And they range from everything from call on the name of Jesus
Yeah.
to hydrogen peroxide
What?
and ionic air purifiers. Now here's the
I was
thing.
always told that. Pray in the name of Jesus.
Yeah.
I rebuke you in the name of Jesus.
Right. Now, first of all, if they're
That's the Southern solution.
if they're interdimensional beings, I'm sorry, the Bible is way off
Yeah.
on what they call them. You know, and I don't know. Maybe you could say that they were just describing angels or demons or whatever.
They
actual
might have been and not
interdimensional
even have
beings.
known it.
Who knows? All right, sorry, all you believers. Didn't mean to pick on you. But the point being that okay, from Jesus to peroxide to air purifiers and all these things, people are saying, yeah, that worked for me. Well, of course it worked for you. Placebo effect. You think it's going to work for you, so it gets rid of it, and you think you found the solution.
I think, therefore, it's for real.
Yeah, right. So all these different psychological situations and principles that I was looking up and seeing in response, they just make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The
No, they do.
one
They kind of do.
the one thing that still kind of holds, despite the social need to agree, is multiple people seeing the same thing at the same time. The need to agree thing, well, why? What did they see at all
Right.
if they didn't all see the same thing? It leaves a little bit of a question.
That's
mark
true,
there
actually. That's a
for
good
me.
point. Then what exactly did they see?
What did they see?
It's a good point.
Yeah. So who knows?
Yeah.
But you believe.
I do.
Yeah, you
I'm
believe.
a believer.
You've seen it.
I'm a believer.
And you know what? As scary as it might be, I do in fact hope that I see one of these things one day.
No, you
because
don't,
I would
John.
love to actually be able to try to,
Oh, no. You think you want
if
to see
it's
one.
possible, analyze the situation. I've read a few stories about people who are like, yeah, I'm a very level-headed guy, so
Yeah.
I saw it, and at first I was really fascinated by it, and then it started
It
running
scared
after
the
me.
shit out of me.
Yeah, crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. All right. Well, if you have a story about anything that fits the paranormal, any conspiracy theory, ghosts, shadow people, doesn't matter, anything like that, and you'd be willing to share it with us, either in print or preferably, if you're willing for us to interview you and include you on the show, email us at isthatforrealshow@gmail.com, and we will definitely get in touch because we want to include people's personal stories in the show. In every show, I like to have actual people who've experienced this stuff.
Interviews are always interesting.
Yeah. And we've gone through
personal
the stuff
experiences.
you've experienced. And you had a few other things, like when it comes to UFOs and the crazy sound.
God, all over the world.
So he still has a few stories left, but we're going to get a lot of stuff that neither of us have.
I'm full of all kinds of stories.
So if it sounds like, well, Diasis just thinks he's experienced everything. No, we're covering all the things he's experienced first while we line up people.
A few things.
You have.
I have seen a few things.
I do wonder because the house. The house.
I wonder about you, man.
Right? No, I definitely wonder about you. Enough of that. All right. Well, if you liked this video, click like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification icon so you get notified when we release new videos. As always, thanks for watching, and definitely share your stories with us.
Perfect.